Hello, I'm a research scientist with considerable experience in what is called preclinical investigations. That is, doing the kind of basic research that leads to um, possibly major breakthroughs in medicine and our understanding of disease. I'm going to start a regular contribution, which I call Zika Update. You can email me at zika.update@gmail.com and try to make suggestions about which topics I should cover. But first, I'm going to start off just doing a search on Google, as many people are perhaps doing, trying to figure out what's going on, both at the Olympics in Puerto Rico, Florida, especially in Miami, and other regions of our country, as well as a number of other countries across the globe. Now, the Zika virus, you should know, is related to another virus, the dengue fever virus, which has caused difficulties, but not nearly as severe in some ways as the Zika virus because it hasn't been known to affect unborn children, as far as we know. But it is closely related to the dengue fever virus, the Zika virus is, and it may be that some of the studies that have been done in that field can help us understand more about what's going on with the Zika virus. Now, one of the most important things is that it affects children, unborn children. And here is a presumably a study of a child born with microcephaly, and they're measuring the electrical activity of the brain to try to understand more about what this means for the prognosis of these children. Now, in many areas, there is no locally transmitted cases of Zika virus, and that's good. But in the case of Miami area, Puerto Rico, there are, and in other areas of the country, there are small areas of Zika infection. Especially in Miami, it's important to know that the mosquito itself can only travel a fairly limited distance during its lifespan. And so this tends to keep the infection from getting spread so rapidly. But of course, mosquito can get caught in a car and be taken hundreds of miles to another location and perhaps bite people in the car as you're traveling and still get out and find water to lay its eggs and result in transmission of the disease across a state. And of course, people people who are infected, for example, those that go to Brazil and come back, might well have Zika virus. And of course, we're all worried about who they might be, and they themselves are worried, and of course, their loved ones are worried. So there's a lot of things to worry about. So um, let's just go through this article right here. Zika's virus, facts and myths, 9 things to know about symptoms. That's what you really want to know. Okay. So, the first thing to think about is that this virus has been around a long time, but it really hasn't gotten traction in terms of causing disease until fairly recently. But now it's a major thing. It still is primarily transmitted by mosquitoes, and only certain species can carry that particular uh, virus. And so if you're not bitten by one of those mosquitoes, so anyway, that's an important thing to know. Even though it's primarily transmitted by mosquitoes, it's now thought that sexual transmission is possible. And of course, blood transfusion, if there is virus in the blood, could be a mode of transmission. In most cases, um, the symptoms are mild. So someone might not think they're that sick, but they can be the person who actually transmits the virus to a new location or to someone who's going to have a baby or whatever. And the key thing to know is that there are certain signs: a fever, skin rash, conjunctivitis, which is redness in your eyes, and then muscle and joint pain like other viruses, headache like other viruses, and of course, and it's in many ways similar to a dengue virus infection, at least in most cases. Now, the CDC has developed some tests for whether you've been infected. And early in the infection, the virus goes up in titer, that is the level of virus, detection of virus particles goes up in your blood and then goes down. But it stays at a detectable level in the urine. So depending upon when you or your doctor thinks you're infected, they customize the test, the first test at least, just to see what they find. And then if it's later, then they go to another test. Like I said, first it goes up in your blood, and it also goes up in urine test, and it stays at a higher level in urine test than in the blood as far as detecting the actual particle. But there's another way to identify whether you've been infected, and that is to look for the development of antibodies in the blood. And of course, the antibody response stays around longer because this is part of the way you're protected from uh, the current infection. Now, there is no vaccine. These vaccines may take some time to develop. Um, so, and of course, how well the vaccines work will be important. It turns out, though, that in dengue fever, development of vaccines was quite complicated by something called antibody-dependent enhancement. I'll go into that subject on a later talk. Okay, just like with any other virus infection, you should take medication to reduce pain and fever, and you should avoid, interestingly, you should avoid aspirin and other and non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs. I'm not sure exactly why that is, but sometimes that's good advice when you have any kind of fever. Uh, pregnant women are at-risk individuals, and in fact, the virus has been linked to birth defects and also with uh, several neurological diseases, and of course microcephaly, which is a very disturbing outcome in terms of childbirth. Even though it's a serious disease, it rarely kills people, although it has been reported to kill a baby in Texas. So there may be others like that. Hopefully, if you have an infection, you're protected against a repeat infection by the Zika virus. I want to just discuss another aspect. Keep in mind that for the most part, a mosquito must bite you, and that mosquito must have a very active viral infection going on. Otherwise, it will not have a high enough level of the Zika virus to infect you. And here's a good example of what illustrates this point. Let's say you go to a party and a few days later you hear, oh, one of the people at the party had a fever and was just getting the Zika virus infection. And of course, you remember being bitten by a mosquito, or maybe you even think maybe you were and you weren't, but you start to worry. Well, should you have worried about that one individual who just got a Zika infection during this public gathering, and that the same mosquito has bitten same mosquito not having the Zika infection has bitten the infected person and then bitten you? Well, probably you shouldn't worry about that particular case because It takes time for the virus to replicate, and just the dilution factor of the virus being diluted into the bloodstream of that individual and then being resampled by the virus, so to speak, by the mosquito, it means that the chances are very low that it actually has collected enough virus particles to in turn infect you in yet another bite. So that's something to keep in mind, and it's important to know. So anyway, these are the things that we're going to be doing here, going through the news, trying to find out what issues are bothering most people. I welcome your emailing me at zika.update@gmail.com. And please, if you're interested in supporting this, indicate a number of dollars that you would contribute. I'm just suggesting that maybe the minimum should be about $5 because it costs money to process credit card transactions. And then I will then send you a invoice by PayPal from PayPal to fund my effort here. Let me just say something else. Uh, right now, this has been posted on YouTube, but I will be moderating a second channel on Daily Motion. And in that particular case, we will be discussing actual scientific articles. And if you have any friends that are studying, biology, want to be researchers in biology, and feel that they have enough of an education to read a scientific article, then also ask them to email me separately, and I will try to send them a reference that they can read and give them a time in which they can listen to my discussion of the paper, and then we can have perhaps a group discussion, perhaps on Skype, and have a real kind of journal club. Anyway, this is what we're trying to do here, and I hope you appreciate it and will support us. Thanks a lot. Bye.